Thank you so much for joining us today, Hiroki. Um, you know, Before we get started, you are the global head of marketing at Airbnb. You oversee all of Airbnb's marketing efforts as well as Airbnb's in-house creative teams. You are responsible for maintaining Airbnb's strong global brand and sharing the story of your millions of hosts who offer unique homes and experiences to guests around the world. You spent 18 previously to the Airbnb. You spent 18 years at Apple and served as Vice President of Global Marketing Communications and Executive Creative Director. And you were responsible for a variety of iconic marketing campaigns for a range of products, including Mac, iPad, iPod, iPhone, and Apple Watch. That I've heard of those products. They're pretty amazing. You live in San Francisco with your family. You hold a BA in graphic design from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jason. Very excited to be here.
So, my first question is always the same for this. It's how are you? And how have you been holding up as we emerge from the pandemic?
No, I've been great. I think like a lot of people, it was a period of adjustment this kind of working from home and working from anywhere. And luckily, Airbnb is really all about being able to work from anywhere. And I think I actually feel pretty good. It feels like we're in a good place and the world is starting to turn a corner here, knock on wood. But I'm feeling good.
I love when we're like, I feel the world is starting to turn a corner, and I think that is a very encouraging sign. So we touched upon it in the bio in terms of your career. So tell us about your career and how did you land at Airbnb?
Sure. Well, excuse me. I started actually as a consultant to Airbnb and just advising. And this was just before the pandemic. And I was helping um, the leadership there kind of think about a new way to market and a new organization. And then once the pandemic hit, it kind of became all hands on deck. And that's when I started to really dig in a little bit deeper and help out. And it's funny, as I got deeper and deeper into the brand and the company, I really became kind of fascinated with what Airbnb does and how it brings people together and how it connects strangers. And I was
Mm.
hooked. I was hooked. And then I was asked to stay on, uh, luckily, and I did. And it's and I've stayed ever since. It never ceases to kind of impress and surprise me, this brand.
Wow. I mean, what you've had a great career. So what role did mentorship play in the evolution of your career, and who are your mentors now?
Mentorship. I think you know, I started as a graphic designer, which is what I studied back in college, and I was really able to I've been lucky enough to work around really, really great creatives and really strong creatives. And I think ever since I was in college, I had this mission, just by hook or by crook, I would try and work with the most talented people I could find.
Mm.
I was really, really lucky to work for a series of design firms when I just graduated from college. And then I was, lucky enough to land in Cupertino around some extremely talented people. And so I guess, and then again, really kind of honored and excited to be able to land at Airbnb around all the creative minds here. So I guess, when you ask about who's been um, played the role of mentor, I think it's just been all of the different creative people that I've had the opportunity to work with, and kind of different points of view that I've been able to see and different kinds of communications and marketing and design work that I've been able to be a part of. I don't know if
Mm.
that's a kind of
No,
squishy answer for you.
no, but that is a great answer. I just love that idea of just sort of really haloing around smart, creative, interesting people, getting lots of different points of view. I love that. And you know, my question then is sort of this idea of like setting this scene. Like we're now in an environment where it's like immersive digital leisure. We are working remote all the time. Like you talked about Airbnb, like that's the ultimate working remote or ultimate distribution of talent. It seems like we never leave the digital and virtual realms. Like we're in one right now. So how will this affect marketing as a whole moving forward?
Yeah, I think It's interesting you asked that. We have this approach at Airbnb that I think is really different, um, where even though we're on Zoom all day, even though that we're predominantly online with our devices and such, I think we're still influenced and get messages all around us. Our friends, people that we follow, people that we admire, sports games, TV, every kind of social, every bit of media still is around us and encompasses us. And I think we're still humans, and hopefully. And so, we still make decisions on the rational side and on the emotional side. And so I think when it comes to creative and marketing, I think we're still essentially solving for the same problems where we're trying to give people the rational reasons why they should think about something, do something, but then also appeal to their emotions and hopefully have them latch on to a bigger idea. And I think when it comes to Airbnb, I think what we have is pretty unique. I think it's pretty special. We've built something that I know is unique in travel, and it's probably unique for most companies out there in that we insource everything.
Wow.
We have a creative, we have an in-house advertising. So all the advertising that you see is done in-house, all the marketing is done in-house, the design of the product is done in-house, and all the PR and the comms are done in-house. And everything is done across the same timeline to deliver against a certain day. And so, if you've ever been in marketing or creative or design, those are all different operations, all different lengths of time. And so to be able to align that stuff, deliver on one day, but then also have it come out of one insight and
Wow.
have everything fed off of one insight is pretty unique.
Wow. I mean, even describing all the different types of departments, all the different types of, all the different like sections of the business. So do you find that it's easier to be creative in an environment like this? Like, how do you ensure that your creative teams thrive when they're not together?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I think, when I started my career, I was a designer in a design firm. and you know, and back then it was creatives were in agencies that were outside of the business.
Mm,
And, no matter how big you were as an agency, no matter how talented you were always kind of at the end of the line. And you were never, ever upstream enough to actually affect the problem to be able to affect
that's
better
interesting.
creative that reaches people. And so, I always find that being in house is actually a much more, you're so much closer to the problem if you're in house. You understand all the dimensions of it. You understand like the engineering issues, the design issues. You understand the customer insight, who you're talking to, the business, the competition, all that kind of stuff. And so your creative approach is much fuller rather than having to like look through this peephole from some marketer that then hires an agency. And so I think to answer your question, the way we stay inspired and the way we kind of keep on top of things is we spend a lot of time together and we spend a lot of time working way upstream. And so the
Mm,
inspiration comes from, I think, looking at problems in a totally different way. I think having a lot more insight into the things that you're doing, the audience that you're going to be talking to. And so I think the way we work naturally provides a lot of inspiration um, and uh, and good inputs.
wow. I mean, I love that idea of sort of being closer to the problem, like getting everyone closer to the problem. And when you're closer to the problem, you're just closer to the insights to help you solve it. And creative is a huge lever to sort of help solve some of the problems that you encounter. But when you're all like close to it like that. But my next question is, my background is also creative. I'm a playwright. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I've noticed is that when I'm working on something and it's good, I can kind of tell, like I can kind of feel that this I'm onto something. This is really, really good. So when you're working on a project, how do you know that you're onto something creatively, and what makes creative work great?
How do you know you're onto something and what makes it great? Um, I think it's probably the same feeling that you have when you feel it. You kind of feel it, and when you know. I think we definitely debate things and we beat things up, and I think it's the ideas at the end of the day after you kind of question it and examine it from every angle and try and find holes in what you're trying to do, and it still feels right, then it's right. I guess when it comes to creative, it's hard to answer in any other way, but just saying when it feels right, it kind of feels right. It sounds a little thin, but
that's amazing, because that's like a perfect bridge into my next question, which was, everyone was talking about marketing strategy as a data strategy, and data is king, and there's so many data points. But are we misreading data? Like, how do you make marketing decisions? Like, how much of your work is intuitive?
yeah, I think the way we work is really, really different. I think the way we like to think about it is that, when you're trying to reach a person, reach an audience, they're coming into contact with all parts of your brand or your company at all times of the day, at all different levels, and so it's not necessarily a funnel that you go down. It's not, a marketing funnel that you go down and you ultimately convert. It's things that you hear, feel, and see and experience all at once sometimes, or over a long period of time, And so the way we work is that's why we in-source everything and build these teams all the way down from, the advertising, the marketing, the PR, which we call the outbound, to the product design and the engineering, which we call the inbound. And all those things are connected together. And so when you experience Airbnb, we should be talking to you from the same insight, from the same place, in the way that we advertise to you, in the way that you read about us in the press, in the way that you come across something that sent you to our site, in the way that you interact with the site and the experience you have there, and then an experience either hosting or staying on your first stay. All of those things need to come from the same insight. And you have to speak across all of those channels, I think, simultaneously, because if you over-index in one and rely too much on, performance marketing or too much on PR, you aren't able to cover that entire journey that every customer goes on. You aren't able to have a consistent idea and message across all of it.
And I love that idea of not over-indexing in one thing, because it's also like people spend a lot of time trying to block channels in their life. So when you're developing a marketing strategy, and this is going to be like something that everyone's probably going to be writing down after, but what are your top 3 evergreen rules that are always in your playbook?
Yeah, I think, excuse me, I'm getting over a little bit of flu. There's kind of basically one principle in that we always try with extreme bias to put ourselves in the customer's shoes, in the audience shoes, and because those people don't have a lot of time, and we're competing for attention with a lot of other things in their lives. And so we have to be sure that we're saying, number one, we have to be sure that we have something interesting to say, an interesting product or experience that we actually want to teach them about or talk to them about. But we really want to make sure that we're in that person's shoes, and we think about the messages that we put on TV. We think about the messages that come across in digital and press and, emails and all of that stuff, and that they match and are supported by the experience that they have on the product. And so we take I keep using the word extreme bias on the customer side, just to make sure that we're looking at it through their eyes, and we're not looking at it through our org chart. We're not looking at it through our own like internal filters and biases of being a creative or being a marketer, an Airbnb employee, and what you want them to hear, right, versus what they're really going to hear.
Right. And that's sort of like this idea of making sure that everything that you do kind of reinforces that one very important idea that you're trying to get across. I think that's a really great way to approach it. So tell us about the upcoming winter release from Airbnb, and tell us about the marketing campaign that comes with it.
Yeah, I'd love to. So we are really speaking to our hosts in this release. And, I think, I don't know if you know, but the last year has been one of the most lucrative for our hosts in Airbnb's history. And I think what's happening is, and we have a lot of new hosts coming to the platform too. And I think what's happening is, in these times when there's a little bit of uncertainty in the economy, people turn to hosting because it is a great way, to earn money. Now, I kept talking about insight, insight, insight. The thing, there's a couple key insights that we had around these new hosts coming to the platform. One is that, most people actually have an Airbnb, but they just don't know it. Which is kind of, it's kind of interesting because everyone travels for a couple of weeks, but they probably never thought about just, well, you don't have an empty home for 2 weeks, you actually have an Airbnb. Or if you're, older like me and you have like us, and you have a kid going out to college, you don't have an empty room, you actually have an Airbnb. And so the insight for the advertising just came around educating people around some of these ideas that you can't just Airbnb it, that it's really, really simple. And the next set of insights is, as people get interested in it, the thing that they're probably concerned about or gives them pause is that it seems like a complicated process, and that you may feel like you're kind of left up to your own, and there's a fear of the unknown to it. And so we've developed a whole new way to get yourself on the platform that we call Airbnb Setup, and with it comes a Superhost guide that gets matched to you. So, Jason, if you're looking to Airbnb your place, you go to Airbnb Setup, and we'll match you with someone that's in your town.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's hosted before, that can walk you through how to do it, that can answer any questions for you, and then also serve as a guide through the whole process, and even be there for when you get your first guest. Wow. to tell you what to expect and to help you out. And then in addition to that, we're also upping AirCover, which is our protections for new hosts. And we're upping coverage from $1 million to $3 million. That'll cover, like, if you left your car in the garage, or if you have, a sneaker collection that you're worried about, or some fine art that you are concerned about. We'll cover all of that.
So so I love that. It's sort of like you're taking advantage of the network. You're taking advantage of the network and allowing them to sort of play a really great role in onboarding new people. And then that idea of sort of building out the trust a bit more, in terms of just knowing that you're going to be protected over the course of your time being a host, I think is great. But so how are you messaging this? Like, what is the marketing campaign? Like, for example, I do have probably multiple Airbnbs. I do. I actually do. I have a condo in Liberty Village that's an Airbnb. Yeah. So tell me, like, what's the marketing campaign? How are you going to try to convince me to take advantage of this?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to this simple idea that, for people that have never done it before, they actually already have an Airbnb, and it's really not that complicated. You don't need to, it doesn't need to be an extra home. Like, you've been lucky enough to have it. It could be your spare bedroom. It could be your primary residence when you're gone. And that if you have a space that's sitting empty, that space could be doing something for you. You could be Airbnb-ing it. And it's really not that difficult. It's really not that hard. And what we're excited about is we designed it to be really, really simple. So the campaign is really about, Airbnb it. It's about you already have an Airbnb, you just don't know it, so Airbnb it. And so we go into these explanations around all these situations where it's number one, it's not that difficult, and number two, you already have the opportunity that you're sitting on.
So I love that. Like, Airbnb, so you're turning, like, Airbnb into like a verb. Like, so Airbnb it. That's amazing. So, like, even that mechanism of sort of like turning it into a verb, turning it into, like, Uber it, like turning it into a phrase, like, what's the creative approach? Like, how did you get to that in terms of your creative approach, and did your team work on it?
Yeah, it's interesting is we look back at all the generations of marketing that have happened at Airbnb, and the emphasis has been around, like, turning people into hosts, getting people to host. Now what happens is you end up spending a lot of money teaching people what this word hosting means, right? Because marketing is really educating people, and so you're burning a lot of dollars trying to get people to become this thing called a host. Now, people are really busy, and there's not a lot of people that have time or energy to become something they currently are, right? It's a much more difficult message to tell people. But when you look at culture and you look at what's happening, and you look, like, the way you talk about it, the way everyone talks about it. They just talk about Airbnb their place.
Yeah.
Oh, I Airbnb'd my spare bedroom when I Airbnb'd my, house when I was gone for 2 weeks. And so we're just leaning into that natural language and spending the money on getting people to understand they have an Airbnb versus teaching them what the word hosting is.
Mm. And so that's actually like a great insight. So in terms of just when you were developing these new products, like developing all the new products integrated into Airbnb, like how are you pulling these insights? Like do you survey people? Like how do you get the insights required to even iterate the product?
Yeah, we have great teams. We have great research and insight teams that are out there mining for this stuff, and
Wow.
they're talking to guests and they're talking to hosts constantly. And we have great research teams that are built into the product teams themselves, so they're constantly understanding how people are interacting with this and using this, and all of those insights then get pulled together, and those same insights that feed the development of the product are the ones that feed the development of the advertising and the marketing. And so, because it's all the same person that you're doing the marketing to is the same person that's going to be using the app,
Mm.
the same person that's going to be booking or staying in a place, hosting a place. And so, those insights need to be the same, and we need to understand that person and that journey that they go through.
Wow. And so I love that idea of like sort of speaking to this persona that you're speaking to. In terms of just the internal side at Airbnb when you're building teams for this, like is like when you're sort of building out a campaign, is it a combination of different people? Like is an engineer on sort of the campaign team when you're doing your marketing?
Yeah, the way we work is, we've kind of framed it out in thinking about the outbound and the inbound. The inbound is the product development process. All the work that goes into the engineering, the implementation of it, the product design of it. And then the outbound are all the pieces that are from the product out into the world. The way you hear about it in press, the way you interact with it with marketing, the way you find out about it, through word of mouth or influencers or whatever. And so all the teams at the highest level work really closely together all year long across our
Um,
product roadmap from year to year to year to year to year. And so you have, and this is what I was talking about being really close to the problem, is you have your people in the advertising group and the design group working really closely and understanding what the strategy is for the next couple of years and
wow.
understanding the capabilities we have on the engineering side and really seeing it from that high altitude, you know. And it's super important because, what's great about Airbnb is you'll go to some of these meetings, excuse me, and you really won't be able to tell who the designer is or who the engineer is or who the
Yeah.
creative is because I think they're so immersed in the process of how stuff gets built, how it ships, and how we plan to market it that it becomes kind of second nature. I don't think I think in my when I started my career in that era, things were much more siloed
Yeah.
and fragmented, and a lot of things were outsourced. And I think we're in this era of everything being insourced again. And we do it to an extreme amount, I think, at Airbnb. And, it's such a smarter way to work, because I don't think creatives are just relegated to creative. I think they can use their talents and the creative process against other things. And the same is true of designers, same is true of engineers and of marketers and product marketers is, when you work together as a team, it just I think the whole thing just works so much better.
Well, I mean, I going back to what you were saying about this idea of the product, like everyone kind of hovering over that product roadmap. Like how far do you iterate product? Are you thinking about Airbnb 10 years from now? Like how far in the future are you looking at Airbnb?
Yeah. Now, what's great about Airbnb is that it's always been like forward looking since the beginning, and you know the founders and the CEO are also creatives, and engineers, and so they have really kind of thought about all the places that Airbnb could go, all the problems that they see that they'd like to solve, and all the new experiences that they'd like to create. And so there's definitely like this uh, natural well of creativity
Yeah.
and ideation that's always happening. And I think it's the teams are amazing, the brand is great, we're all starting to integrate and work together. But that situation really only works when you have an amazing brand, which, you know, we're lucky enough to have, and a creative CEO and creative leadership. You know,
Yeah.
those things together, I think are what make this ecosystem that we have work.
And I think that you just nailed that, this idea of having that creativity in the DNA of the brand, DNA of the people there. That is powerful. And if you have that, that's a really easy way to get alignment because it's in your DNA. You're pretty aligned if
Yeah.
everyone is sort of has that in their DNA. But so we have these great products. We have Setup, we have Cover. So when are we going to hear about this? When do you go in market, and when do we find out? Like, where will it be live? And when?
Yeah. So you'll see the marketing hit this week, and it'll be on all digital channels. And so you'll see it. Hopefully, you'll see a lot of it. And the products will be going live this week as well. So you'll actually be able to interact with it and check it out. But we're really proud of it, and I think it's really going to help kind of move a whole new generation of hosts into this idea of Airbnb.
Wow. And even that as a KPI, like I love the way you just said that, like a whole new generation of
Yeah,
hosts. I think that's
yeah.
a so when you're talking about KPI internally, do you speak like aspirational like that across the board? Is that sort of like how you talk about performance at the company?
I think I think there's a lot of different facets that we look at performance and success of some of these products and features. And there's, we definitely have the kind of aspirational, emotional side and much more intellectual side of how we judge this stuff. I think what's different about Airbnb, and I have to bring it back to really just the fact that the founders are creatives and that the CEO is a creative, is that there's a lot of, I think the creative process, you have to bring a lot of trust along
Mm.
with it, and you have to have an organization and leadership that's willing to trust the process, number one, because there isn't always a clear path through that process. But then also trust instinct as well as the tangible things that we measure and be able to balance those two things. And
Wow.
we're lucky enough, I think, to have founders and a CEO that can do that.
I love what you just said there about in terms of that creative process. It isn't a straight line. It literally is like you end up somewhere, and then again, it's a combination of all the things, the insights, the data, the intuition. So you let us know about the winter release. That is huge. But what is next? Like, what is next for you? What is next for Airbnb in 2023? Anything you want to share, like top secret?
Yeah.
Well,
No.
it's already one secret. Now we're
Yeah.
going to do another one.
Yeah. I don't know. I was hoping you give me some good ideas too. No, I think we're really excited about bringing new hosts onto the platform, and we're really excited to invite new guests to go and stay with these hosts and build connection between our guests and host communities. So I think we're just going to continue to make sure that guests are being able to do this in a delightful, easy way, and we're going to really continue to make sure that new hosts are able to participate in this. And we just really, it's pretty simple. We just want to create great experiences and features for the community of guests and hosts.
Yeah. And it's funny because like, even talking to you now, it's like I'm planning on going on my honeymoon, like a long delayed honeymoon. It never even
Ah,
occurred to,
congratulations.
I'll stay at an Airbnb. Never even occurred to me to Airbnb while I was at an Airbnb. So it's like
Yes, yes, most
I'll become
people.
an ultimate Airbnb person.
Yeah, most people don't think about that. I mean, you remind me, one of the features that we built in is when you go to the landing page to start setup, the team built this amazing calculator. So if you're gone on your honeymoon, you could actually look at, where you live. You can kind of pull the scrubber across how many days you'll be gone, and it'll give you a pretty good estimate with comps in your area of how much. And I bet you'll find that you could probably cover, if not all of it, a good portion of your honeymoon just by Airbnb in your place.
That is it. So actually, it's so funny. It hasn't even started yet. I'm convinced. I'm gonna just like
Right?
take this part and just show that to my wife. But that is amazing. But
Yeah, yeah.
so
It's your place could be working a lot harder for you.
and I think that's it. It's sort of like that. your players can be working a lot harder for you. You don't even realize you can do it. But also, I love that idea of just that extra layer of trust and safety and verification you've built into the product as well.
Yes.
Um, in terms of just people who are new, who are going to be starting that journey, that is probably a very important value prop for them.
Yeah, yeah, there is quite a bit of amazing work and technology that the teams have built into AirCover. One of which is identity verification, and I think we are by Spring going to be able to have 100% of our guests traveling globally with a verified identity, which is a big deal because the
Wow.
first step to trust is just making sure people are who they say they are. And then in addition, there's a lot of technology that we're going to be rolling out around reservation screening, which will definitely look for signals across the board that indicate, some reservations might be something to look out for. And so that's built into our platform as well.
Now, and that was sort of like, in terms of just even the history of Airbnb, like that journey of verification was just, it was so huge. But it sounds great. So I'm looking forward to learning more about it literally tomorrow.
Yeah.
But Hiroki, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was it's so funny because I just love the creative side of marketing. I just still love how it feels. I just love the way that you position sort of like having creatives get closer to the problem, getting everyone closer to the problem, getting aligned like that, having creativity in the DNA of an organization. Um, those are great. Those are great insights. I'm gonna try to steal as many of them as I can.
Yeah, yeah, sure. No, no, I think, I think creatives are capable of much more than people think they are, and maybe even themselves. And I think,
Mm,
having them internal and having them close to the problem, I think the creative process and, the process of ideation and the process of taking a look at problems from lots of different angles and being, suspending your negativity bias and being ruthlessly kind of customer focused. Those are things that creatives are really good at, and they add to the process in a profound way. I'm a firm believer in that, and so I'm just excited I'm able to participate in a company that believes that also.
amazing. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for your time.